Fantastic. Thanks everybody for joining. For those of you that don't know me, I'm GTO90. I've been I've been in the community with DigiByte since I think late 2016. September 2016 is when I showed up on the scene. I've been a core developer shortly thereafter ever since. And I frequently review pull requests and manage some of the developer operations side of things and the infrastructure on that side. Today, we're going to talk about what is the DigiByte improvement process. This is something that when we got started, we didn't do, but we rolled out a few years ago when we had some rather contentious recommendations to change our algorithms. And so that's where we actually forked this from Bitcoin and refurbished it or refactored it so that it's applicable to DigiByte. All of you, if you've been here long enough, know that DigiByte is in fact a derivative of Bitcoin. It's often confused that DigiByte is a fork of Bitcoin or a clone of Bitcoin. It's not. It is a derivative. We do share an awful lot of code with Bitcoin, but a lot of our code that makes DigiByte special is in fact our own code, and it's built and integrated right inside of a lot of that legacy code that we do inherit. Be that as it may, we are a UTXO blockchain just like Bitcoin, and so because of that, we can stand on their shoulders and borrow a lot of their best practices, one of which is the DigiByte improvement process, or actually it's the DigiByte improvement proposal to be more specific. So what is things we're going to talk about today is we're going to explain what is the DigiByte improvement proposal, what's that process look like, how did the DIPs get started? I kind of touched on that already. When is the DIP necessary and when it is not necessary, and how does the DIP work? So we'll start with the obvious, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually bail out of this this PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to take you guys to the DigiByte improvement proposal repo itself, and we're going to walk through the very first DIP, DIP001, which explains exactly what the proposal and the workflow is. So if you are ever curious or interested in proposing changes to the protocol, you can do that. But first, what it is, the DigiByte improvement proposal, I'm sorry for the typo here. It is both a proposal. The actual artifact that you create is called a DigiByte improvement proposal, but the process is also explained in the first DIP. So I guess for the sake of what it shows on the screen, I'll just keep using that language, but it is actually a DigiByte improvement proposal. Anyway, the process is a system for proposing improvements to the DigiByte protocol and network. Laura, I thought we had changed that language. It's not related projects. I want to be very clear here. It is the DIP process is very specifically focused on the protocol itself. So that doesn't really involve the website. That doesn't involve a lot of the libraries that we use and dependencies in some of the other projects that you might find in the DigiByte core repo ecosystem. For example, Rosetta. If we wanted to have the DIP process extend to those, we would have to update the DIP repo to reflect that, or we would have to create DIP or improvement processes for those repositories. So the actual language is that the DIP process is specifically targeted at the protocol and the network itself. So not all of the repos that you see in DigiByte core. It does provide a structured approach for individuals and groups to submit ideas, discuss them, and ultimately to hopefully implement changes in the DigiByte protocol itself. DIPs are analogous to the request for comments. And of course, you can go to Bitcoin, and Litecoin has them too. In fact, even Ethereum has them. A lot of the major blockchains have this same process. So there's nothing new here. We're all borrowing what works from each other, but be that as it may, it's analogous to the request for comments that you see on the internet protocol, so TCP/IP and the IP stack. This is the same process that they use. They're numbered, with each DIP having a title, an author, and a version number. And here in a bit, I'm going to show you the very first one. DIPs can propose changes ranging from technical modifications to the protocol to improvements in the development process of the protocol. and even just the documentation itself around the protocol. When is a DIP executed? DIPs are needed whenever someone proposes changes or to improve the DigiByte protocol. As a quick aside, we're a rather mature community in that we've been around for 10 years, but our processes have not been very mature up until the near recent past. I'd say 2020 is when we rolled out, I believe, the DIPs, or maybe it was 2021. And so prior to that, we've had lots of different channels, Telegram chats and side chats and Reddit and you name it. There's been communities scattered all over the place that have had very passionate ideas about how to make changes to the protocol, and that's been very difficult to manage, and it's been very difficult to keep expectations aligned properly because we didn't have a formal process in place to manage those expectations and those conversations. So that's what the DIP is actually intended to do. It's all about providing a single place for the entire community to propose improvements to the DigiByte protocol itself. It's standards and best practices. It's a very clear process for outlining recommended standards and best practices for DigiByte. Also, the core wallet and any interoperability standards that we have. You can even write informational DIPs, which we're going to crawl through the actual DIP that explains what the difference between these different types of DIPs that there are. And you can also use the DIPs to recommend experimental features that maybe don't exist today. This would, good example of this would be a new algorithm swap. This is what the DIP process looks like when you create one. Everything starts its life out in a draft. We're going to actually go through this in more detail here in just a moment. Once the draft is created and submitted as a pull request to the DIP repository, it gets either set to the status of proposed, rejected, or withdrawn. And we'll explain how that all works here in just a moment. Once the community has had a solid opportunity to debate and work through those DIPs, the decisions are made to either set those to final or active, and we'll talk about how that decision gets made. And they can also be replaced. So DIPs, if in their evolution, if there's something that needs to change dramatically, they can be version controlled too and replaced with more recent versions of those DIPs. Or they can be marked as obsolete. So the DIP process is also intended to be a historical record of all the conversations and recommendations that the community makes with respect to DigiByte. If it doesn't exist in the DIPs, then it might as well not exist at all. So we mark if a DIP is not going to be integrated, or if some change in the protocol renders a DIP obsolete, we'll mark it as obsolete, but it always stays in the repository. Every single DIP that's ever proposed stays in there, and it's version controlled so the community can see the history of proposals that have been made over time, which ones get integrated, which ones don't, which ones kind of fall off. I can't see the conversation, the text conversation. So if there's texts and questions happening, I can't see them.
You're good. Nothing yet.
I just hear a lot of bleeps and bloops, so I'm not sure what's happening. Anyway,
I think people are entering in.
Okay, all right. And so with that, I mean that's a kind of like a Mach 2 eyeballs, very fast, high level. What is the DIP process? But I think what's actually going to be a lot more fun, or at least a lot more interesting, is to actually walk you through the DIP itself. And so before we do that, although I am going to share my screen, I'm going to drop the link to the DIPs somewhere. Where do I do that, Laura?
I can do that. I'll do it in the chat.
Okay, I'm trying to find the chat. Like, where even is that?
So you can put that. There's actually a chat for this like voice and screen conversation, but there's also the DigiByte events channel, which is right above where everybody's icons are.
I see
think I think the DigiByte events is probably the easiest one for everyone to get around.
Well, I've only got this screen in front of me, so I just posted it in there. But Laura, if you want to post this and
Gotcha.
spread it around, you can do that too. That's no big deal. So if everybody wants to click that link and follow along, I'm going to actually stop sharing my screen for just, or actually, I can just change windows. Can I just change windows? Oh, that doesn't seem to work. So we'll change it this way. Let me know when you guys can see my screen. And if it's too small, let me know.
Looks
Is
good.
that okay?
Yeah, looks
All
good.
right. Okay. All right. So really, what is a DIP? Let's take a deep dive. So as you can see, it's a pretty Spartan repository right now. This morning, I actually changed this. It hasn't been actually merged into the master or the main line of development yet. It's really an oversight from me because I've been managing this. I should have done that years ago, but it just fell through the side. But I updated it this morning so that you guys can see that this is actually the develop branch reflects the current state of the DigiByte DIP process. And as you see, there's only one, and that is the actual purpose and the guidelines itself. So it's the first DIP that explains what the process is and how to go about using it. So starting right here at the top, we've got the summary basically that I've already given y'all, and then it dives right into the workflow. Again, the DIP process begins with a new idea. So anybody, and I mean literally anybody, can come up with any idea, and they need to become the champion of that idea. If you want to propose something to change about the DigiByte protocol that you feel pretty passionate about, we invite you to create a DIP. If you're having private conversations in various channels, that's great. So like Discord or Telegram or wherever, Reddit, it doesn't even matter. It's great to start a conversation around your ideas there. In fact, here a couple of years ago, I recommended that everybody start using Gitter. While it was a noble intention, I don't think it's actually working out. I don't think anybody find that very controversial for me to say. It just didn't catch on. The real reality is that the core developers are super busy, and most of the core developers don't participate in asynchronous communications. It's just not something that they do. They don't participate in Telegram or Discord. I mean, some do, most do not. But that doesn't mean they're not here. They just don't participate in those kinds of channels. So this is probably going to change. I'll probably open a pull request to change this. I've been talking with all of the core developers recently about centering more on GitHub. This particular repository, in fact, has a discussion forum. It also has a wiki. And so, therefore, if you have an idea, I think the future process is going to be to start a conversation about that right here in GitHub itself by creating a new discussion post. And then you can have a very public conversation about your idea. That'll at least get the core developers involved. It's not likely that you're going to be able to get all the core developers into your various favorite channels, and that's okay. It's just if you've matured your idea to the point where you're ready to actually take the next step and create that into a formal proposal, it's going to be a pretty good idea to get it in front of the core developers' eyes by either creating a discussion or right now creating a new thread in the Gitter channel. But again, like I said, I don't think that really took on with all the core devs, and so that's probably going to change here in the next couple of weeks to a month or so. The purpose for starting the conversation first before you write the DIP is, I mean, you're looking at a DIP right now. You see how big it is. You see how formal it is. It is intended to be a formal process, so it's got a level of pain and friction to it. If your idea is worthy, you should be willing to put that kind of effort into it. And before you do that, though, it's a good idea just to see if anybody's if it's resonating with anybody. It'd be an unfortunate use of your time if you spent that time to draft this really complicated document just to turn out that nobody's really interested in the idea anyway. So again, to start the process, use whatever channels you're comfortable with, then get that into the GitHub discussions here for the DIPS repo and start a discussion there. Once the community kind of agrees that this idea has some legs to it, that's when you actually get in here and create a fork of this repo, and you create your draft DigiByte improvement proposal. So that's what these couple of paragraphs talk about here. And so once your draft is complete, a DIP editor, which all the DIP editors are listed here, these are all the core developers as they exist today. This could grow over time as we get more core developers and they get more of their pull requests integrated into the main line of development. The core developers can promote new community members to become editors as well, but these are the editors as of today. Once you finish your draft and you open your pull request, the editors will actually take it from there and assign it. Well, getting ahead of my skis here a little bit, but the bottom line is you open a pull request following these guidelines, and that will get the editor's attention to take the DIP to the next state in the workflow. You are the author and the owner of that DIP, and it stays that way. So you're the champion. The editors are just editors. They're not going to reject your DIP. It's a very liberal process. There's no politics here, and there's not going to be any premature rejection of anybody's ideas. Everything will pretty much make it in unless it's inappropriate for some reason. If it's wildly inappropriate or controversial and the community is really just not for it, it might get rejected. But again, the standard is pretty low if you're willing to do the work. Just know that it's got to follow the guidelines. It's got to follow the format that's specified in this document, or it will get rejected. So as long as it meets the format guidelines, pretty much all ideas are welcome. This kind of outlines what the editor's responsibilities are. Again, they're gonna read it and make sure it's sound and complete. Again, that format is super important. If there's formatting issues or licensing issues or any kind of issues, the editor is going to work with you before merging or assigning it a number and merging it. So there'll be a pretty healthy back and forth, and the community can actually participate in that pull request process too. Here's the section that defines what your DIP needs to look like. So every DIP needs to have these things. It's a shall and a must. It's not a recommendation. If it's missing any of these things, the editors are not gonna merge it until these are cured and it's brought into compliance. Again, it has nothing to do with the idea itself. It's just the format. And standardizing on a format makes it easier for the community and for the core developers to actually work through all of these proposals that the community might make. Then it gets into even more detail, like from a per section thing. How do I write a preamble? Well, here it explains how you write a preamble. Then it goes into how you write your abstract and so on and so forth. Here's the different type of DIPs that you can create. There's a couple. We have DIPs for recommending standards. These are anything that describe changes that affect most or all of DigiByte's implementation, such as a change to the network protocol, a change to a block or transaction validity rules, so on and so forth, things like that. Then you have informational DIPs, which describe how DigiByte is used, any design issues, general guidelines for usage, information that might just be interesting to the community. All these things would ultimately live in the docs directory inside of the DigiByte core protocol, so that users understand how to use or work with or develop on DigiByte. And then you've got process DIPs, which describe how to change processes around how DigiByte protocol development works. Again, I want to stress, this is all focused on the protocol, has nothing to do with any of the other repos or projects that you see in the DigiByte core. This is all just DigiByte core. Here's how the DIPs kind of move through the various statuses. Again, you the community, you create the drafts, and then you propose them. Once they're accepted or rejected or withdrawn, well, actually, all drafts are going to get merged with a DIP number. At that point, they'll either be set to proposed, rejected, or withdrawn, and dips can sit there for quite a number of months. If you go look at Bitcoin, you can see that a lot of their DIPs have many years under their belt. Sorry, I didn't mean to click there. Sometimes they get, you know, they get adjudicated pretty quickly, and they get, you know, proposed and moved to final active pretty fast. But this is the process. This dip, your dips would have a rationale, but in here we talk about the greater economic theory. Let's see, greater. I can't find where that went. I think it might be on the home page. We use the greater economic theory to determine if a dip should be, here we go, the economic majority. What does this mean in terms of Bitcoin? So if you guys are wondering, how does a dip go from proposed to actually accepted? No, it's not just the core developers that get to decide. It's actually the DigiByte economy that gets to decide. And so who makes up the DigiByte economy? The obvious first actor is the miners, right? So the miners have a pretty large impact on whether something gets accepted or not, right? So if we implement a DIP in the protocol and that requires a hard fork, well, the miners are going to have a say in whether or not that's going to get deployed. They have to upgrade their nodes, they have to upgrade their mining pools to support that that new version and that new DIP, and so they're going to get a pretty hefty say. But it's not just the miners either. It's also the merchants, the people that use DigiByte. And I want to be very clear here. I am not talking about DigiByte holders. I'm talking about people that use DigiByte. So if you're a merchant and you accept DigiByte, you have a pretty large say in whether a dip gets accepted and deployed. If you're a consumer and you spend DigiByte, and I'm not talking about traders, if you spend DigiByte for goods and services, then you're going to have a pretty large say. And the reason why is because usually merchants and traders are running nodes, and if they're not willing to upgrade their nodes, their full nodes, to signal that they support a particular version of DigiByte, then that's not going to propagate across the network, and it's going to get rejected. So so that's what we mean by the economic majority. We're not talking about holders and traders here. We're talking about merchants, consumers, and miners. They're the ones that ultimately are going to decide whether or not a dip gets accepted. So that's how it gets accepted, and that's all talked about here in this rationale section. I don't want to just read it off the screen at you, but this is where you can go to learn about it. Then we talk about the dips comments process. You know, there is a standardized or a recommended process for making comments on any given dip. How to do that so that it keeps the process as emotionless as possible, and it just stays focused on the actual proposal itself. There's some licensing discussion. All new dips start with a base set of licenses, which is based on the BSD2. So you can read about that more here. You can choose other licenses if you want. These are the ones that we recommend. These are not recommended, and you can read about why here. Then there are some that are absolutely not acceptable. We won't accept those at all, and the rationale for why. So that's 30 minutes, or just roughly 30 minutes of a really quick tour around the DIP process, where it lives, where you can learn more about it, and more importantly, how you can create one and get started. I don't have any more really to share beyond that because we only have one DIP. This is it. We do have one pull request, however. Yoshi has created a DIP. It's in draft form. It's not even ready for review yet. With respect to how to handle the subsidy fix. So we've actually fixed the subsidy issue in 8.22. The issue, though, is that it's a hard cap instead of a smooth a smoothing of the mining rewards as we get to zero. So it literally just goes from from 1 to 0 instead of going from 1 to a decimal or a fraction down to 0. So this is Yoshi's proposal on how to resolve that smoothing issue. It just hasn't been finished in a number of years, but hopefully one day he'll be able to finish that and we'll be able to get that merged and then implement that fix. But that's it. That's all I got. So from here, feel free to pepper me with questions or start a discussion, whatever you want to do.
Thanks for the tour of GitHub GTO. Yeah, so this is just our Q&A time for anybody who has any burning questions they have for him. I'm watching the chat. Looks like Jason might be typing a question. So hold on one second, GTO.
Yeah, I've got the whole hour, so
okay,
I can hang out. Yeah.
And so, really, like you were saying, there's discussions happening everywhere, but if you're serious and you have an idea that you feel strongly about, you can take it into GitHub, and that's where the actual like rubber meets the road action starts to happen type of element into the whole concept idea. So
That's right. Like I said, it's awesome that people have conversations in all these different channels, and our community is really robust, and it's kind of everywhere. That's great. But as I pointed out, that's where your DIP kind of wants to start. And if in your various communities and your groups, if it sounds like you've got a lot of support for your idea, this is where you convert that from just a discussion forum chat to a real actual proposal. And unless and until that happens, it doesn't exist. At least in terms of the core developers, right? You're not going to get your idea considered unless and until it gets to this stage. Until it gets to this stage, it's just a robust conversation that's happening in whatever community it's happening in. So you, as the person with that idea, or the community member with that idea, you have to become the champion for that idea, and then you have to come here and propose it for the community to have a more rigorous debate about why we should not make that change to the protocol. So let's see.
Can you see the chat?
Got a couple. Yeah, I'm just going to start with Jason, I guess. Let's see. Okay, he's just saying that you're welcome. No worries, Jason. I'm happy to help. Appreciate you guys joining. And Chopper Brian is saying, any suggestion on how to invite more developers, i.e. the ones who are helping don't get burned out? Man, that is the timeless question. Like I said, I've been here since 2016. A lot of us have been here for a really long time. I've seen a lot of developers come and go. I think a large reason why we see a lot of developers go is because we've, up until now, we've lacked a lot of that more mature development practice. We're doing everything we can to tighten that up. This DIP process is one of those initiatives. I think some changes you're going to see proposed in the next couple of weeks are going to also further help with that developer burnout issue. I don't want to get controversial here, but I'll just say that I think it's great that we have a lot of communities. They're spread all over the place. and I don't think those should change. I think they've all got their character, they've all got their pros and cons, but as the core developers, I think we need a place to focus our very limited attention and volunteer. So we're all volunteers. None of us gets paid. In fact, I haven't received a single DigiByte for any of my development work in ever, and I won't accept it either. I don't ask and I don't want. But that comes at a cost for me. I'll just speak for myself. I don't have time to hang out in Telegram. I'm not going to hang out in Discord. I'm not gonna participate in these communities because I just do not have the mental bandwidth to do that. But I do have the bandwidth to give to the core development itself, and I do that. You can see me on just about every pull request that comes through, and I'm involved in improving the development process. That's kind of my bread and butter. And so I think way of going about things. And so I hope that we can mature that process by leaning more heavily on GitHub here in the future. And I think that's going to probably start to attract a better, I don't want to say a better quality developer because we've had some pretty high quality developers just get burned out. It's going to attract a better quality developer experience, is what I really mean to say. And that's something that I think the DigiByte project has really struggled with. But we're not going anywhere. All of us are still here. You don't hear from us, but that doesn't mean we don't exist and that we're not working as hard as we can. And so I think once we get this tightened up, we're gonna see a much brighter future for developers that want to participate in core DigiByte development. All right, so I kind of rambled a bit on that one. Hopefully that answers your question, Chopper.
And I saw one
Let's
more
see.
under related question, like what are the dev skills needed? Can you talk to
Oh
that just a
man,
bit?
I'm gonna point a finger and make fun of myself here. Um, I know C++, I know C. I can write that code, but what I'm not is a UTXO blockchain developer. I am a seasoned software architect. I've got a number of skill sets under my belt. It's just not blockchain being one of them. But I know DevOps. I know CI/CD pipelines. I know how a good development process should work. I'm my day job. I'm steeped in governance, so I've got a lot of experience in that space as well. I've got a lot of experience in managing open source projects across a couple of different domains that I'm not going to share here. But um, be that as it may, everybody has something to offer. And just because you don't think you have anything to offer protocol development, like if you fork the repo and you open that code and it scares the heck out of you, that's okay. We still want you here. There's still something that you can do. For example, you know, you can just peer review things. You can test things. You can run functional tests. You can run unit tests. There's still probably something that you can do here. So if you reach out to us, I would say Gitter, but none of us are really using it. So if you create a discussion forum thread, that's probably going to get our attention a lot faster. I'll just go to the DigiByte core. I'll go to the DigiByte repo and show you the discussion forums there. You can create a post. Anybody can, as long as you have a GitHub user, um, and it's free. You don't have to pay any money for a GitHub user account. You could post a anything in here, and you'll get our attention, and we will respond to you. So if you're interested in helping, drop us a message in here. Let us know that you're interested, and we'll reach out and see if we can find a place to plug you in. Maybe you just manage documentation. Maybe you just do QA and testing. There's a lot of Python code in there. All of our functional tests are Python code. So if you don't know C++ and you don't really know anything about the protocol, and you don't want to touch that, maybe you just focus all of your energy on the functional test suite, and that becomes your bread and butter and what you're really good at. So there's things like that. Qt development. which is just front end development, but in C++. So if you know anything about Qt, maybe you just want to help make the core wallet look better. You can get involved in that. Maybe you know something about CI/CD pipelines and you know a lot about GitHub. Maybe you want to help us fix our failing GitHub Actions tests, which I've tried to do and haven't been able to get resolved. But there's so many places I can't cover them all on this group chat. But again, if you come here to the discussion forum and you post and you reach out saying, "Hey, I want to get involved," one of the core developers is going to reach out and try to get you connected and plugged in. Let's see. Uh, Lots of comments. I'm looking for questions.
I think you touched all the questions that they had in the chat. Does anybody have any questions they want to do or voice?
I could. I have a question that I think some people in the community are probably asking about or wondering about, and I know it's not necessarily related to the DIP, but maybe you could go into how the DigiByte improvement protocol like fits into it, and that's just about the state of 8.22. And is 8.22, was that pushed through the DIP protocol, or is that opposite of that, or is that in a different manner?
No, that's a fantastic question. I'm glad you asked that. If you go through, I'm not gonna bore you to tears by going through all of the text that's in here, but there is a section in here that talks about what needs to go through a DIP and what doesn't. And 8.22 doesn't. And here's the reason why. 8.22 is not adding any new features to the DigiByte core protocol. What it is doing is bringing us up to date with Bitcoin's .22 code base. So there are some new features that we cargo along with that, like for example, Taproot. That's an example of a new thing that's coming along, but that's more of an example of us inheriting a BIP instead of a DIP, and that's really just the nature of um, us being a derivative of Bitcoin. So if though we were to implement an algorithm swap, and I've been saying this for years, I'm not opposed to an algorithm swap. What I am opposed to is an algorithm swap because somebody says so. I have yet to see a DIP opened for a algorithm swap. I really want to see one because again, I'm not opposed, but I want to see it in this format so that I understand what the rationale is. I want to see the data backing up the rationale. I want to see the pros and cons. I want to understand the work that needs to be done. I need to see it in this format, but I've never seen it in this format. And until I do, I'm definitely not going to approve an algorithm swap. But that is an example of what we would need a DIP for. Um, Another example would be like the staking. A lot of people have talked about, well, it'd be great if one of our algorithms was a staking algorithm. Again, fantastic. I'm not opposed. I'd like to see the DIP because I don't understand the level of effort required. I don't know what the rationale is, and it's not something I'm proposing right now. So, you know, I think that in the past there's been this tendency for the community to think that just because there's a lot of tweets or there's a lot of Telegram chat that it's up to the developers to actually propose those things and make that work. But as I pointed out in this process, where is it here? Here it is, right in the first line. If you feel passionate about staking or an algorithm or some assets framework, whatever it is, you must become the champion for that. You can't expect the core developers to be your champion because they're very busy and they hardly have any time to do what they do. So you've got to be the champion for your great ideas and you've got to bring them through the process the right way. That's how it needs to happen. And if we get more of the community doing that, then we're all going to benefit from it.
Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, what you said along those lines with asynchronous communication, I think definitely rings true. Going back to many of the times people wanted like you said, algo updates and whatnot, and you just get the sense that there's it's consensus in the community. But you're right, where everyone's kind of expecting someone else to do the work. So it's good to get that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, just in my personal life, I live in Slack and Microsoft Teams and a number of other messaging things. Amazon has their own, and I live in that. It's called Amazon Chime, and I'm telling you, I don't need personally. I don't. I could not. My mental health would not be able to handle trying to keep my eyeballs across all of these communities. I just can't do it. I won't do it. I would just go insane. You'd have to put me into a rubber room. And so the way to get these ideas in front of us is through this process. It's got to be through this process, or it's just a lot of chatter happening, and it's not going to go beyond that.
I have a question.
Yeah,
The same idea that a person comes up with, could it potentially be implemented to different blockchains in the future?
I love that question, and I have an exact example of where that's happened on our side. Yes, a long time ago. I think it was 2018. I could be getting that wrong, but Dandelion plus plus, that the Dandelion protocol that was intended to help add just a little bit more anonymity to transactions, was proposed as a BIP in the Bitcoin uh, repository. That was that was adopted by us, but dropped by Bitcoin. They just couldn't make it work, but our community did. And so this was prior to the DIP process being rolled out. So in that way, it's not a really great example because we didn't put it through the right process. But it would something like that would need to go through the right process. But be that as it may, we have borrowed ideas from other blockchains through their improvement proposal processes and brought them into ours when they never even adopted them. And the same thing could happen in the other direction. If somebody were to implement this fantastically amazing assets, like on-chain assets protocol that didn't require any third, like it was just all on chain, you didn't need any extra infrastructure, and it just worked and it was amazing. Somebody else, like maybe Litecoin, loves that, and so they take it, or maybe Dogecoin likes it and they take it. This is the nature of open source. There is a licensing section in here that you can read about. You can license this stuff, but I don't think any of these recommended licenses would give you exclusive license. These are all open source licenses. So if you're prepared to champion and propose a improvement, just know that the whole world can see it, and any blockchain could try to adopt it, not just us. So, but that's okay, in my opinion. I think we all, when one of us wins, we all win. I have never ever believed in a future where Bitcoin was the only one or Litecoin was the only one. I think it's a multi-chain future. I think our security and our freedom and liberty depend on that. It, I've said, put it differently. If it was just Bitcoin, we'd have a single point of failure. All the nation states of the world would just have to focus on Bitcoin and take it down, and then we all lose. So I think I'm okay personally with sharing my ideas. I think that's how we all win. Who knows? Maybe another blockchain takes our idea, irons it out, fixes all the issues with it, and then we take it back and we integrate it too, and then we all have it. So that's just the power of open source generally.
Thank you.
We're getting close on time. This has been I always love when you come on GTO. You do such a great job explaining things. Are there any other last minute questions anybody has before we wrap up? Sorry if you can hear the thunder behind me. I'm hoping I don't lose power. Yeah, White Kegel said, "Great job."
I
As
appreciate it.
always,
No worries.
it was.
I
It was.
do.
It was a fantastic.
I do what I can when I can. Happy as always to do it. Not going anywhere. I'm here for the long haul. But when I can come around, yeah, just let me know. And if I can make time, I'll do it.
And just one maybe trail question. You mentioned maybe tease a little bit that we might be seeing some more DIPs coming out in the maybe near future. Don't want to make any timetables.
There is a pretty big one coming, but it is not mine, and I can't talk about it because I don't want to get everybody reverberating on that. I want the process to work the way that it's supposed to work. And we'll see. But there are some changes that don't require a dip that are going to come by way of a pull request on some things. The website specifically that you can look out for. But as I said, it's all geared towards just trying to pull the conversation interaction with the core development team closer to GitHub than it has been in the past. So just stay tuned for that.
All right, fantastic. Thanks for the details.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for coming on a Memorial Day Sunday, and especially, of course, thank you, GTO, for making the time. And Archie's got it recorded. I'm going to update that PowerPoint to take that typo out, and then I'll have the PowerPoint loaded in the resources channel. And I think this will wrap up another good education hour. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend and stay safe.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.
All right, thank you. Take care, everyone.